First time I held a camera, a real, what you could call a professional tool, was when my Uncle Norman, well, not my Uncle Norman, in fact my wife's Uncle Norman, gave me a Practica. He was upgrading to something else and he gave me his old camera. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with it at the time. It was just a nice thing for someone to do. And then he kept asking me what I'd done, if I had taken any shots, and embarrassingly, I had to say to him, not really, I haven't got into it yet. And he really encouraged me, and he took me out and we took photographs. And when I started seeing some of the results you can get from a very mediocre camera, that was the beginning of my journey, really. That's where I started to love seeing the results and love working with the actual tools. It was always very magical. I mean, in a simplistic term, I don't think we go through life not understanding so many things, like how on earth do you pick up a telephone and ring your brother-in-law in Australia? How does that work? And I think that's what it was that amazed me with photography, how you could actually capture an image. What you've got to do is have a photograph that stops them in their tracks and they think, oh, I'd like to see that on the wall. If people look at my photographs, I think that I'd like them to think I had empathy with the subject, like I was comfortable with them and I drew out of them a good conversation. For a picture that takes me a second to take, I'll spend a couple of hours with a stranger or a client just to get them on side and know something about them. I don't want it to be what I call a lot of street photography, a stolen photograph, something someone knows nothing about. I want them to be part of the photograph, part of the photography system. Like they were there, they colluded with me, and we got a great photograph at the end of the day. Something they're happy with as well as I. Nothing that has upset anyone. Something that just looks comfortable as a photograph, comfortable colour-wise, not too vivid and make your eyes sore after a while. Something's comfortable to look at, and it looks like the person is comfortable having it taken. At the moment, I'm spending a lot of time in the Asias. I love Vietnam, I love Cambodia, Siem Reap and Angkor Wat. There's so much to be had around there. There is a different light in Asia. There is better colours. Even in the most poverty-stricken villages, the paint which they put on the walls of their buildings 20 years ago has deteriorated into this wonderful greens and blues and browns which you can't get out of a tin. This is age, this is patina, this is beauty, and you see it everywhere. And then you see an old man or a young girl with a veil, and you put them in front of this meticulously fantastic purpose-built backdrop, and it just works. There was a particularly good shoot which I did in the town of Nha Trang in Vietnam. And I'd palled up with a local photographer called Long Tan. He's in fact one of the premier photographers in Vietnam, and he still works with film, funnily enough, and does all his own printing, and he's got a magnificent gallery in Nha Trang. And I palled up with him one day and we went off into the villages and we took some particularly lovely photography of a grandmother and her grandchild. And because Long Tan was with me and he could speak the Vietnamese to the couple, we got some particularly lovely photography with the young child hanging around the neck of the grandmother, and then another very young child being cradled like the mother and baby, shot of religious nature. And I've actually got one of those pictures hanging in the Vietnamese embassy in Hanoi, which I'm very proud of. And they've been notified as well by the Leica group in London as being exceptionally fine photos, so I'm quite proud of that as well. And there are a few which I've taken in Vietnam of particularly old people with colourful garments, people that have really cooperated just that little bit more, have gone out and got changed. There's one of a beautiful old man with a massive, he was 102 years old, got a lovely moustache. He went and changed into his traditional costume, and he was just such a natural, and the look on his face as he read his book was just perfect. I think it's one of my favourites. And then later on, his little granddaughter came in and gave him a hug, and I got that as well. So with every photograph I look at, I remember taking it and I remember the conversation. I tell you a small story about a lady in Vietnam who I come across. I was with my guide, Mr. Hui. We go out on his motorbike for the day, and then we park up and we walk through the villages until we see something worthy of some time. And this particular day, we were walking through a village and I saw this lady working on a foot-powered sewing machine. And I said to Mr. Hui, "Oh, have a word, see if we can go over and have a talk to her." So we did, ended up going over and talking to her. And almost instantly, when we sat down and started talking to her, this lady had reasonable English. She started telling me about her experiences during the Vietnamese War. And she told me how her father used to take her to a different house every night, so that the Viet Cong and the Americans didn't find her, because she was a particularly pretty and young girl, and his father didn't want any harm to come to her. I said, "Oh, was that a good thing, or was that, you know, terrible?" She said, "No, it's beautiful," she said. She was very positive. She said, "Some of these people had radios, and some houses had musical instruments, and we used to dance." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "You used to like to dance?" She said, "Oh, I used to love to dance." I said, "Do you still dance?" She said, "I haven't danced since my husband died." I said, "Okay." So I sent Mr. Hui out to find a radio, which he came back with, and I danced. It was lovely. And she invited us to stay to tea, which we did, and it was very nice. And we stayed for another 2 or 3 hours, had some tea, took some lovely photos, and then that was it. We left and never saw her again. But a touching moment. I would like to achieve that one fabulous photograph that everybody agrees is worthy of being called very good. And you don't know what it is until you see it. I've got several which I think are good. Whether there's a better one in me or not, I'll only find out in years to come.